Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into quite a stack of material today. We've got news reports, video transcripts, analysis, all centered on, well, a massive event, PSG's recent win in the Champions League final.
And it really was massive, wasn't it? Not just any win.
Exactly. Historic, actually. It sparked these incredible celebrations, across Paris, across France. But, well, as often happens with these huge public events, that joy got tangled up with some pretty serious incidents.
Yeah, a real mix. So our mission here is to sort of unpack all that. We'll pull out the key details from the sources, try to understand what happened, and maybe see what lessons can be learned. It's complex.
It definitely is. And this deep dive is brought to you by News, simply.
Okay, so where do we start? The match itself, I suppose?
Yeah, let's start on the pitch. That's where it all began. PSG facing Inter Milan in the final.
And boom, the scoreline. That's the first thing that just jumps out from the material. 5-0. A crushing victory for Paris Saint-Germain.
5-0. I mean, even just saying it, it sounds huge. And the analysis confirms it is huge, historically speaking.
It absolutely is. This is the biggest winning margin ever in a Champions League final. It beats AC Milan's 4-0 against Barcelona back in '94.
Wow, so it really was dominance.
Oh, completely. And the stats, they just paint that picture so clearly. You look at the numbers. PSG completed, 307 successful passes in Inter's half?
Okay.
Compare that to Inter's 139.
Big difference.
Huge.
Yeah.
And shots. 23 for PSG against only 8 for Inter. Even the expected goals metric tells the story. 3.23 for PSG versus just 0.49 for Inter.
So not even close, really.
Not really. The descriptions in the sources say it all. A chef-d'oeuvre, a historic match, a crushing victory. One commentator apparently just said it wasn't even a match.
And what's really interesting, something the reports highlight, is how young this PSG team was.
Yeah, that's right. The starting 11. Youngest ever in a Champions League final. Average age just 25 years and 96 days.
To achieve that kind of result, that level of dominance with such a young squad on the biggest stage, that's really something.
And you see that youth really shine through with Desiree Doué, 19 years old.
Incredible performance, right?
Oh, yeah. Involved in 3 goals, scored 2, assisted 1. Apparently, that's a first for any player in a Champions League final. It's like the perfect example of the potential this young team has, which the material points to.
Looking back across the whole season, though, the sources do mention it wasn't all smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. There's talk of a turning point, maybe around late November, December. Possibly after that City game.
Right, where something clicked, and they found that consistency.
Exactly. And that shift led some people, some commentators, to start calling them the best team in Europe this season.
It's a bold claim.
It is, but after a 5-0 final win. Well, they made a pretty strong argument, didn't they?
Hard to argue with that scoreline.
Oh.
Okay, so let's move off the pitch. The impact, the reactions. This is PSG's first ever Champions League title.
Which is just massive for French football. Marseille isn't the only French club with that trophy anymore. You can feel that historical weight in all the reactions covered in the material.
Yeah, you see it everywhere, like President Macron's quote, "Champion mon frère." He called it a day of glory, said Paris, capital of Europe tonight. Very strong stuff.
And the head of the French Football Federation, Philippe Diallo, echoed that. Called it an exceptional evening for PSG, yes, but also for the history of French football itself.
Even Kylian Mbappe, their former superstar, he chimed in.
He did, congratulated them on Instagram, said something like, the great day has finally arrived, and called it a victory for a whole club.
Which brings us to that whole narrative around Mbappe leaving, doesn't it?
It really does. It's unavoidable in the analysis we looked at. Many see this win happening without him as really significant, maybe signaling a move away from that bling-bling era, the focus on individual.
Right, and people are asking, would they have won with him this year? Did his presence maybe create an imbalance?
Exactly, and they contrast it with the work rate of this current team. They mentioned Ousmane Dembele's pressing, for example.
Yeah.
It's this idea of a more collective effort succeeding.
It's a fascinating angle. And you hear the emotion from the captain, Marquinhos, after the match. The reports quote him saying they gave everything, wanted it too much. He talked about how difficult it was to get the trophy.
Really captures the struggle and the value of it.
Yeah, and he paid tribute to the coach, Luis Enrique, for bringing in a real philosophy, and he shouted out the fans, too, telling them to enjoy.
And Luis Enrique himself, he really comes across as a key figure in these sources. Some view him as maybe the first coach who really managed to impose his vision fully on the club.
Implemented his strategy, got that balance right.
Yeah, shared the goals around more players, built what feels like, according to the reports, a real team, something deeper than just the starting 11.
There's also this little detail, almost symbolic, the timing.
Oh, right. The win happened exactly 14 years to the day after Qatar bought PSG, June 1st, 2011.
And the analysis puts that in context, right? Compares it to Chelsea taking 8 years after their takeover, City taking 15.
Yeah, it kind of benchmarks their journey to the top.
And one more thing from the club side, the tribute from the fans at the Parc des Princes.
Ah, yes, the tifo for Zama, Luis Enrique's daughter who passed away. A very moving moment showing that connection between the team, the coach, the fans. Really powerful.
So you've got this massive sporting achievement, years in the making, full of history, full of emotion, and naturally that joy just exploded outwards.
Completely. The reports paint this picture of just pure euphoria. You had, 48,000 fans staying at the Parc des Princes long after the final whistle.
Yeah, incredible. And bars packed, the Champs-Élysées turning into this spontaneous street party.
Eiffel Towers lit up in PSG colors. The whole city just ignited, it seems.
Exactly. And there were official plans to continue that celebration, weren't there?
Yes, absolutely. The sources confirm those were going ahead, even with the other issues. A big parade planned for the Sunday on the Champs-Élysées.
Huge crowds expected, like 110,000 people.
That was the estimate. Avenue closed, security checks, the whole thing. Then a reception at the Élysée Palace with President Macron later that evening.
And something back at the Parc des Princes, too. Concerts.
Yeah, a celebration show planned there for around 9:30 p.m., so a whole weekend of official events lined up.
But, and this is the difficult part of the story the material covers,
Yeah.
alongside all that joy, there were these really disturbing incidents.
Yeah, unfortunately. Clashes reported on the Champs-Élysées, fireworks being used against police, tear gas deployed, the kind of chaotic scenes you sometimes get with huge crowds.
And tragically, it went beyond clashes. The reports detail a real human cost across France.
They do. 2 deaths reported in connection with the celebrations. A 17-year-old boy was stabbed down in Dax in the Landers region.
So the prosecutor there apparently said initial signs point to it being an individual act, maybe not directly linked to the football result itself.
That's what the report indicated, yeah. But still tragic timing. And then in Paris, a 23-year-old scooter driver died after being hit by a car.
And the police prefect said that one could be linked to the festivities, but it's still under investigation.
Right. Just awful news alongside the celebrations. And then the injuries.
A lot of injuries reported nationwide, wasn't it? Like 192 people?
Yeah, and that includes 9 police and gendarmerie officers hurt. 1, seriously, hit by a firework mortar somewhere in Coutances.
Goodness. And looting, too. Some stores in Paris.
4 commercial stores looted, according to the reports, and the scale of the police response. Well, the numbers are pretty stark. 559 arrests across the country.
Wow, nearly 500 just in Paris.
491 in Paris, leading to 320 people being taken into custody overall. And there was that separate, awful incident in Grenoble, too, a car hitting a crowd, injuring 4 people.
Just a grim counterpoint to the celebrations. How did the authorities frame all this? What was the assessment from someone like the Paris police prefect, Laurent Nunez?
Well, his assessment, as presented in the sources, was quite nuanced. He described the situation as neither a success nor a failure.
Okay.
He basically said, look, we shouldn't minimize these incidents. They're serious. But he also warned against, tarring all PSG supporters with the same brush.
Right. Don't stigmatize the whole fan base.
Exactly. He did note the number of incidents was actually less élevé, so lower than in some previous big events. But he added, we will never get used to this. It's still unacceptable.
It's a tough balancing act, isn't it? Acknowledging the problems without condemning the celebration itself.
Absolutely. And interestingly, almost like political opportunism, one report mentions the Paris deputy mayor for sports using the win to argue for PSG staying at the Parc des Princes.
Referencing that ongoing dispute about buying the stadium.
Seems like it. Linking the club's success to keeping them at their historic home.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together from the sources, what's the picture that emerges?
Well, you clearly have this incredible sporting moment, a historic win, a young team, a coach's vision realized, the culmination of massive investment over 14 years. Just undeniable triumph.
Pure joy for the club, the fans, the city.
Right, and you have the planned celebrations, the parade, the official recognition. But layered right on top of that, almost inseparable in the moment, is this other reality.
The spontaneous crowds, the disorder that clashes, and the tragic consequences.
Yeah.
Injuries, arrests, even deaths.
Yeah. And the official response trying to navigate that complexity, managing the crowds, dealing with the incidents, but also trying not to shut down the genuine celebration.
So this deep dive really highlights that duality, doesn't it? The absolute peak of collective sporting joy, side by side with the really difficult, sometimes dangerous challenges of managing huge public gatherings.
It absolutely does. And it leaves you thinking, it poses that fundamental question. How do we, as a society, handle these moments? How do you balance letting people experience that massive shared emotional release of a historic win?
With the absolute need to keep people safe, to prevent disorder, to avoid these tragedies.
Exactly. What does this whole event, with all its light and shadow, tell us about more than just football? What does it say about managing crowds, public space, and maybe even deeper social dynamics? It's something to really ponder.